us through the post-cabinet briefing. Minister.
Good morning. Cabinet held its meeting on the Wednesday of the 30th of March 2023 on issues that affect the environment, on electricity. The Minister for Electricity, Dr. Hossein Soramkhupa, undertook visits to 14 power stations for first-hand insight of the challenges facing Eskom at power station level. The visits allowed the Minister opportunities to engage with management, workers and unions at the coalface with an aim to forge collaboration at a power station level as part of the program to improve generation capacity and ultimately address electricity shortages. Cabinet joins the Minister in recognizing that Eskom employees are key to solving our energy challenges. Minister Ramkhupa will in the coming weeks brief the country on his findings and the plan to deal with load shedding. On labor force survey on jobs numbers, Cabinet welcomed the upward trajectory in employment situation in the country as the labor force survey reported a 48,000 increase in the number of jobs in the formal non-agricultural sector during the fourth quarter of 2022. The jobs growth was driven by trade, business service and mining sector, bringing the level of employment in the country to almost 10 million for the period. The steady increase in the number of jobs is a result of concerted efforts by all players in partnership with government in the implementation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The fourth quarter jobs figures built on the solid employment gains of 648,000 jobs in the second quarter of 2022 and 204,000 jobs created between the second and third quarter of 2022. The focused implementation of the ERRP is resulting in strong inroads into employment creation and the fight against unemployment and poverty. On the Buy Local Summit and Expo, Cabinet applauded the successful hosting of the 11th Buy Local Summit and Expo held in Johannesburg under the theme Growing the Economy and Creating Jobs Through Localization, which was addressed by Deputy President Mr. Paul Mashatile on the 28th of March 2023. The Expo showcased over 200 high-quality homegrown goods and services from toys, educational material, furniture, foods and drink products to electronics. This was demonstrating the great potential in South Africa for innovation, adaptation in manufacturing, and the capability of local manufacturers. Cabinet encouraged both business and citizens to buy local, as every purchase or demand for local products and services contribute in the revival of the economy and support job creation. On South Africa-Belgium relations, Cabinet welcomed the confidence displayed in South Africa through the historic state visit of His Majesty King Philippe and Her Majesty Queen Mathilda of the Kingdom of Belgium at the invitation of President Cyril Ramaphosa from 22nd to 27th March 2023. The strong bilateral relations with a focus on trade, foreign direct investment and tourism underscored this inaugural state visit. Further, the South Africa-Belgium Business Forum provided a platform for exchanges and sectoral conversations to improve trade and investment relationships, which holds the potential to promote South African industrialization. Belgium is one of South Africa's most important economic and export partners. In 2020, South Africa exported $2.38 billion to Belgium in sectors such as diamonds, delivery trucks, organic chemicals, and precious metal scraps. There are also significant investment opportunities between our two countries in energy, infrastructure, and healthcare. On the National Conference on the Constitution, Cabinet welcomed the discussion on the Constitution held at the three-day National Conference, which took place from the 22nd to the 24th of March 2023 under the theme Reflections on the Constitution, Rule of Law, Accountability, Social and Economic Justice. The deliberations reflected on the past 25 years of the Constitution and chartered what needs to be done going forward. The Constitution remains a living and imperative document in government's pursuit of transforming the lives of all South Africans for the better. On the Non-Sexual and Reproductive Justice Conference, access to sexual and reproductive health rights was the focus at the conference held from the 22nd to the 24th of March, led by the Minister of Social Development, Minister Lindiwe Zulu, and government is committed to ensuring that all people have the power and resources to make healthy decisions about their bodies, sexuality, and reproduction. The second report of the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi Summit on ICPD 25, titled Sexual and Reproductive Justice as the Vehicle to Deliver the Nairobi Summit Commitments, was also launched at the conference. This provides guidance on achieving sexual and reproductive justice for all in South Africa. On the recent floods and severe weather, President Ramaphosa visited Port St. John's on the 28th of March 2023 to assess the response of government and civil society to the situation following extensive damage caused by the recent flooding in the area. The President reassured communities of government support and applauded the work of the emergency services who assisted in the rescue efforts after the flooding in Port St. John's and surrounding areas, which caused landslides, uprooted trees, blocked roads, severely affected the lives of people. The National Disaster Management Center is coordinating government's response, working with the Eastern Cape and the OR Tambo District Disaster Management Centers to limit the negative impact of the floods on our communities. Cabinet noted the use of science in the response and mitigation efforts through the work being undertaken by the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, together with the South African National Space Agency, SANS, and the South African Environmental Observation Networks and the South African National Weather Service. With deepening impact of climate change, the role of science, technology, and innovation in disaster mitigation, response, and in some instances, prevention has become critical. Cabinet reminded people who live in low-lying and flood-prone areas to always exercise extreme caution and follow weather warnings. On the public sector wage negotiations, Cabinet was briefed about the ongoing public sector wage negotiations and welcomed early indications of the possibility of reaching agreement with trade unions representing majority of the public servants. On the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster's response to the 20th of March protest action, Cabinet applauded the efforts of the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster and the National Joint Operations Center, NETJOINTS, to ensure that the 20th of March 2023 protest action passed without major incidents. Whilst acknowledging that operations of that nature cannot be mounted on a daily basis, Cabinet has directed the JCPS cluster that it develops and table an integrated and intelligence-led crime prevention plan to urgently and effectively deal with organized crime, safety and security of the people of South Africa. Cabinet expressed its appreciation of the solidarity shown by the majority of South Africans in rejecting the calls for a shutdown and protecting our constitutional democracy. On the recapture and the investigation on the Facebook rapist Thabo Bester matter, Cabinet was briefed on progress on the efforts to arrest fugitive Thabo Bester, the Facebook rapist who escaped from the G4S-operated Correctional Center. Cabinet directed Correctional Services, the Department of Correctional Services, to speedily finalize the process to take over the operations of 2 private companies managed correctional centers and ensure consequence management for everyone involved. On Mr. Klute and Mr. Klute Maree and Thomas Maree assassination, Cabinet condemned the assassination of Mr. Klute Maree and his son Thomas, the insolvency practitioners who were involved in some high-profile liquidation cases, and sends its condolences to the Maree family on their loss. Cabinet directed law enforcement agencies to leave no stone unturned and swiftly bring the assassins and those who hired them to book. On the Border Management Agency, Cabinet has applauded extensive preparatory work done to ensure that the Border Management Authority commences to operate as a standalone entity with effect from 1st April 2023. The Border Management Agency is an important component of government's work to effectively secure South Africa's borders in a manner that protects national interests and enhances national security. On government decisions, the first decision is on progress on broadcast digital migration, commonly known as BDM. Cabinet received an update on the broadcast digital migration program as the country prepares for the analog switch off and the consultations undertaken with affected parties, including members of the public. Cabinet noted the progress made with the installation of set-top boxes for qualifying beneficiary households who applied for government assistance. Cabinet granted concurrence for the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies to gazette the analog switch-off date for South Africa. The Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies will then brief the nation on the analog switch-off date and the processes that they've done and all the work done to make sure that South Africa completes the digital migration. On the white paper on conservation and sustainable use of South Africa's biodiversity, Cabinet approved the white paper on conservation and sustainable use of South Africa's biodiversity. South Africa is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, and the white paper will help the country take advantage of its biodiversity. It emphasizes the importance of the biodiversity sector to South Africa's economic growth, conservation, and equity in the biodiversity economy. The white paper also highlights the importance of protecting indigenous knowledge and biodiversity. The third decision was on the draft small, medium, and micro enterprise and cooperatives funding policy. Cabinet approved the publication of the draft SMMEs and cooperatives funding policy for public comments. This forms part of the other interventions to support small businesses, including the National Integrated Small Enterprise Development Framework, NISAD, that was approved by Cabinet in 2022. The draft policy proposes 17 critical interventions that will enable the estimated 3.2 million SMMEs and 43,000 cooperatives in the country to thrive. These interventions include addressing the fragmented financial support mechanisms, consolidating a database of small businesses, improving access to startup capital, and increasing business development support. Government has prioritized SMMEs and cooperative support because these businesses create the most jobs and provide the most economic opportunities for people to earn a living. The draft policy will be published in the Government Gazette and as well as the website of the Department of Small Business Development on www.dsbd.gov.za. And on water and sanitation framework, Cabinet approved the water and sanitation framework that will be used as a guide on how sanitation services are planned, managed, and regulated in a more equitable manner and aligned to technological developments. The framework was also developed to respond to the service delivery challenges witnessed in aging and deteriorating infrastructure with poor maintenance and infrastructure that was not designed to service many people. This framework will also be used to address service delivery gaps and provides measures to lower the high number of households that are not served with adequate and safe sanitation in South Africa. And this includes outlawing the bucket system in informal settlements. The framework further prescribes minimum qualifications and experience for process controllers at wastewater treatment works and experience requirements for wastewater treatment plant managers. On the policy and policy direction on rapid deployment of electronic communication networks and facilities, Cabinet approved the policy and policy direction on rapid deployment of electronic communications networks and facilities. The purpose of the policy and policy direction is to direct ICASA to prescribe regulations on the procedures and processes for resolving disputes that may arise between an electronic communications network service licensee and any landowner during the deployment of electronic communications networks and facilities. Efficient deployment of electronic communications network is a priority for the government as it supports the country's move towards the digital economy and universal access to the internet. On appointments, and all these appointments are subject to the verification of qualifications and the relevant security clearance. Cabinet approved the appointment of Ms. Happy Lusillo as CEO of the South African National Parks. Cabinet approved the appointment of non-executive board of directors of Centec, who are Mrs. Ms. Sazani Faith Mudau, who is appointed also as the chairperson, Ms. Veronica Makoma Mutloutsi, Mr. Temba Piri, Mr. Mapuleng Murupa, Dr. Chabuyo Sesane, Mr. Mbasa Metusi, Advocate Nkumeleni Mdunungu, Mr. Luvuyo Keise, and Mr. Kiruben Pile. On bills, the draft electricity amendment bill, Cabinet approved for submission to Parliament the draft electricity amendment bill. The objectives of the amendment bill are to 1. Strengthen the role of the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, NERSA. 2. Strengthen the provisions related to licensable and unlicensable or exempted activities. 3. Make provisions for the transitional measures for the creation of the transmission system operator. And lastly, to define the functions of the TSO, which amongst other includes the provision of an electricity trading platform on a multi-market basis and provide access to the transmission network on a non-discriminatory basis. The second bill is the Public Administration Management Amendment Bill. Cabinet approved for submission to Parliament the Public Administration Management Bill. The main objectives of the bill are to provide service delivery by better alignment of human resources, governance, and related arrangements across the 3 spheres of government. The bill also removes unfair disparities in public administration and provides for the creation of a framework for collective bargaining. And this allows us to move towards a single public service in the country. The Public Service Amendment Bill, Cabinet approved for submission to Parliament the Public Service Amendment Bill. The bill aims to clarify the roles and duties of executive authorities in relation to heads of department and provides for certain administrative powers to be vested with heads of department, while strategic powers must reside with executive authorities. The bill also augments the role of the Director General in the Presidency to create a head of public administration and also clarifies the role of the Public Service Commission in respect of grievances. The Draft Electronic Communications Amendment Bill, or ECA Bill, Cabinet approved the gazetting of the Electronic Communications Amendment Bill for public comments. The purpose of the proposed amendments is to increase the level of competition in the telecommunications sector and drive down the prices of communication in the country. The amendments to the Electronic Communications Act will allow the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA, flexibility to regulate competition issues in the sector. On upcoming events, school holidays, Cabinet wishes all learners and educators a well-deserved break and reminding parents that the safety of our children must remain a priority even during the school holidays. On the Easter and Ramadan period, Cabinet extends its best wishes to the Christian and Muslim worshippers during the Easter and Ramadan period, respectively. Cabinet appeals to those who will be traveling during the holiday period to be respectful to other road users and adhere to the rules of the road. Drivers should keep to the speed limit and ensure that their vehicles are roadworthy and not drink and drive. On the South African Investment Conference, President Cyril Ramaphosa will lead South Africa's hosting of the 5th and the last installment of the first round of South Africa's investment conferences on the 13th of April 2023 at the Sandton Convention Center in Johannesburg. Since the first investment conference in 2018, South Africa has attracted 1.14 trillion in commitments. This represents 95% of our initial target and translates into investments across a wide range of economic sectors. Of the 152 investment commitments made previously, 45 projects have been completed, while a further 57 projects are currently under construction. These investments have resulted in new factories, call centers, solar power plants, undersea fiber optic cables, expansion of production lines, and the adoption of new technologies. During the State of the Nation address, the President announced a target of 2 trillion rands for the new round of investment mobilization period that will commence in 2023. On the AFCFTA Business Forum, South Africa will host the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Business Forum scheduled to take place at the Cape Town International Convention Center from the 16th to the 19th of April 2023 in partnership with the AFC-FTA Secretariat. The AFC-FTA Business Forums will serve as a platform for businesses and investors to connect with new partners and customers and expand their footprint and access new markets in the priority sectors identified within the continent. On Freedom Month, South Africa will commemorate Freedom Month in April to mark the country's transition from the oppressive apartheid regime to a free democratic country. Today, all South Africans enjoy protection of the Constitution, and we are free to be who we are and pursue our aspirations within the confines of the law. The commemoration of the Freedom Day is a reminder of the many sacrifices made to secure our freedom that led to our country's first democratic elections on the 27th April 1994. The celebration of the gains of our freedom and our collective determination, and it is also the celebration of the gains of our freedom and the collective determination to work even harder to address the challenges that still plague our country and ensure that we leave no one behind in creating a better life for all. On messages of congratulations, Cabinet extends its congratulations and well wishes to the South African comedian Trevor Noah, who won Europe's prestigious Erasmus Prize, making him the first comedian to win the prize since Charlie Chaplin in 1965. The Erasmus Prize is an annual prize awarded to individuals or institutions that have made exceptional contributions to culture, society, or social science in Europe and the rest of the world. We extend the congratulations and well wishes to the recipients of the inaugural Charlotte Maxeke African Women Leadership Awards hosted by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. The event recognizes and honors exceptional African women leaders whose achievements, influence, and contributions have advanced Africa's development in various sectors of the society. The awards also recognized contribution to the advancement of gender equality and women's empowerment. The Cabinet also extends its congratulations and well wishes to the national football team, Banyana Banyana, as they prepare for the second appearance of the FIFA World Cup. They will travel to Serbia for a friendly on the 10th of April 2023. Cabinet also wished to extend its congratulations to Bafana, who have qualified for the 2023 African Cup of Nations following a 2-1 win victory over Liberia in Monrovia on the 28th of March 2023. On condolences, Cabinet expresses its condolences to the family and friends of Ambassador Musa Mozimula, 88, who in 2013 was conferred the Order of Luthuli in silver for his dauntless and excellent work in the liberation movement, often at great risk to his life, and for representing the interests of the liberation movement and South Africa in the international community. He was amongst the 155 Congress activists arrested on allegations of high treason in December 1956. To the family and friends of the 3 people who lost their lives during the floods in the Port St. John's and surrounding areas, and to the family and friends of the 5 people who were killed and 3 wounded in 2 separate shooting incidents in Tongaat, KwaZulu-Natal on the 23rd of March 2023, to the government and the people of India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan on the loss of life following the earthquake that hit those countries, and to the family and friends of Mr. Randall Robinson, 81, an American activist and founder of the Trans-Africa, a high-profile lobbying organization in Washington that helped reshape the U.S. foreign policy toward apartheid-era South Africa, and for the U.S. to accept that apartheid was a crime against humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister in the Presidency and also responsible for Cabinet Affairs. Colleagues, the statement that the Minister presented was the outcome of the Cabinet meeting that was held on Wednesday, the 19th of March. I will then start as per our protocol by recognizing any hand inside the press room, and if we don't have any, we will then migrate to questions that have been sent online. Thank you. Can I invite Takalani to take us through, maybe let's take the first 4 questions online.
Thank you. The first 4 questions, the first 3 will be coming from John from the New York Times, who is asking 3 questions which are all related to the ICC and the arrest of the Russian president. And the first question is, Minister Pandor said recently that she was seeking the legal advice regarding the ICC arrest for the Russian president and South Africa's obligations if he comes to South Africa for the BRICS summit. And the question is, has the legal advice been delivered to cabinet yet? And if so, what was the advice? And if not, when do you expect to receive that legal advice? And the second question is, what are some of the major factors that cabinet is considering in its deliberations over what actions should be action to take should President Putin come to South Africa with the ICC arrest warrant of arrest still pending, and if South Africa is considering withdrawing from the ICC? And the fourth question will be coming from Natasha Perry from the SABC, who want to know in regards to the Thabo Bester case, if the government is not embarrassed as to how a convicted rapist and a murderer escapes from the prison. Those will be the first question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Takalani. Minister, these are the first batch of questions that we have online. We might give you, Minister, the platform to respond.
Thank you. Let me start with the last question on the Thabo Bester matter. Indeed, government is embarrassed. It's an embarrassing situation that a convicted criminal with sentence to life and 75 years escapes from prison. That's why Cabinet has instructed law enforcement to make sure that he gets recaptured as soon as possible, but also to make sure that everybody who was involved in the in assisting or aiding him, or who was negligent in any form of and manner, must face consequences, including those who have already been dismissed from the Correctional Service Center. As government, we take seriously our responsibility to make sure that convicted criminals serve their term in jail, and those who are their victims feel justice that has been served. And in that regard, that's why Cabinet has directed the Department of Correctional Services to ensure that they fast-track the takeover of those correctional facilities. You'll recall where Thabo Bester, fugitive Thabo Bester, escaped. It's a correctional center operated by G4S, and we've instructed that the 2 centers that are operated by the private companies must be taken over as speedily as possible. Earlier this morning, the Department of Correctional Services announced that they've started mechanism to prepare for the takeover of those prisons. They've already served notices that they are not going to renew the contracts for the management of those correctional centers. So where we are as government, we are going to make sure that incidences of those nature do not repeat themselves. On the questions regarding the ICC and the legal opinion has not yet been served to Cabinet, and Cabinet will express its view when that matter is served by the relevant department, which is the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and will advise accordingly. And the other question was we cannot talk about what are the factors that we are considering as yet, because we don't have the submission as cabinet on the matter. When we receive the submission, we'll then deal with the matters and we'll update accordingly. Whether the South Africa is considering withdrawing from the ICC, you will recall that South Africa had started to table a bill which was in Parliament for the withdrawal from the ICC, and the governing party went to its national conference and took a resolution not to withdraw, and that bill has subsequently been withdrawn from Parliament, I think 3 weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the comprehensive response. Can I also invite another set of questions? I'm not sure how many can we take, Takalani, but if we can have 4, let's go for them.
Well, thank you. The following question will be from Suman Naidu, who's a freelance journalist. And the question is, does Cabinet or government as a whole have a response to the developments in Lesotho, where we have seen the sovereignty and borders of the Republic of South Africa being discussed in another country's parliament regarding reclaiming land from South Africa? And can government assure South Africans it will take all necessary steps to defend our sovereignty and borders as a country? And there's a question from Bosi Chimombe from the SABC. And the question is, please explain the rationale behind the deployment for 4 weeks of the SANDF troops ahead of the national shutdown, and why this period of time, and what have they been busy with after the 20th of March? Have there been additional costs to the taxpayer, and if so, how much? And we have Paul from Bloomberg. The question is, considering the disaster of the electricity crisis, will Cabinet request Parliament to speed up the processing of the electricity bill, and when does the executive hope for it to become the law? And the last 2 questions from Christian Duplessis from Network 24. And the first question is, what is the comment of the Presidency that South Africa is becoming a mafia state with assassination on people like Klute Moray, Babita Diokara, and the alleged poisoning attempt on Andre de Ruyter? And how should these assassination attempts be stopped? And the last question is, what is the comment of the Presidency about the concerns that the UAE authorities have not been able to give an update on the Gupta extradition process? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Takalani. Minister, we have a batch of questions that will gladly invite you to come to give South Africans and the public the government's response to. Thank you.
On the question around the discussions taking place in Lesotho, the simple and straightforward issue is that South Africa has its defined borders and has the responsibility to protect its what we call territorial integrity, and the borders are known internationally, and will allow the Parliament of Lesotho to decide what they discuss, but the territorial integrity of South Africa will never be threatened. So everybody can sleep peacefully. On the question of whether we'll request the electricity bill to be expedited, yes, indeed, the leader of government business, the Deputy President, is engaging with Parliament on the expediting of not only the electricity amendment bill, but a number of bills that are a priority for the country, and we are estimating that those bills should be prioritized and finalized by the National Assembly or Parliament by the end of term of the new year that is starting from the 1st of April. On the question of the deployment of SANDF for 4 weeks, I need to explain, which I've already done. The South African National Defence Force was deployed first in September 2022, at the request of ESCOM, but also to protect national key points. That deployment period, because you can't deploy them indefinitely, ended in sometime in March, and there was a request to extend because the work that they've been doing is not ended. And then that's why the extension to the 20th or 17th of April, 17th of April. And the cost is 155 million, and that deployment, they continue to do work to protect the national key points and address the challenges that we have with economic infrastructure in the country. And that's the reason of the deployment. And we've clarified they were not deployed to deal with any protest, but because they were available at that point, they needed to be ready to protect or to support the police in their work. During the protest, you'll recall that it was only the police who were active in managing the protests. On the question of the mafia state, what's the question on UAE? On the question of the mafia state, it's for this reason that if you go back to the cabinet statement, cabinet has instructed the Justice and Crime Prevention and Security Cluster to make sure that we develop an integrated and intelligence-driven crime prevention plan that will deal with organized crime, because mafia tendencies is organized crime and the general safety and security of our people. We are concerned at the incidences that are taking place, and we are confident as cabinet that we have capacity and capability within our law enforcement agency, if they work together in an integrated manner, to then stem out this problem before it gets out of hand. On the question around the UAE authorities not updating, the Department of Justice continue to interact with the UAE authorities, and our embassy in the UAE continues to interact. And I don't think the issues that are at hand that they're considering are issues of public consumption as yet. When those issues are ready, the Minister of Justice will update the nation on the matters of the Guptas and work that is being done to make sure that they are extradited to South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think you have responded comprehensively to the questions that have been sent to us via WhatsApp. But maybe let me check with Tagalani if we have any other questions. Thank you very much. The indication I get, Minister, is that those were the questions that we had. May I also indicate that the full cabinet statement is available on the GCIS government website, but also for members of the media, it has been shared also on the group. But for anyone who wish to have the cabinet statement, we are available also to forward you to that. On that note, thank you very much, and thank you for the attention, and thank you, Minister, for the feedback of the cabinet decision. This session is adjourned, and thank you very much.